Excuse me.
Okay, here goes the countdown.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to another week of the Enough to Keep Going podcast on the E2KG network. This is episode 134 for the week of March 12th. This week, gentlemen, has been crazy in the news and the world as we sanitize our keyboards and controllers and mice. Hopefully, everybody is healthy and that our kids are safe. Unfortunately, we have the joy of coming to you virtually from wherever, and you can listen to us from whenever. So it does not matter. But what does matter is the fine gentlemen that are here with me tonight on our GX show. So every other week on the Enough to Keep Going podcast, we come at you with our GX show, our gaming experience show, where we walk through not only our picks plays assignment in terms of kind of what we've tasked each other with to play, but also what we've been playing over the last 2 weeks. And in those other weeks, every other week, we come with the deep dive, our gaming news in review and analysis. But tonight is our GX show. And gentlemen, this is my first GX show back since mid-January. So other than when we did the decade in review show, so I first thought, I'm going to have so much to talk about because I could go all the way back to Tokyo Mirage Sessions, but that feels like a long time ago. So I tried to keep it a little more recent tonight. But I'm more excited to hear what you guys have been playing. So joining me on the mics tonight is Osiris Prime. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thankfully.
All
Virus
right.
free.
That is good. That's good.
As far as I know. Let's put it that way.
Don't touch your hands, your face, keeping them out of
Sorry.
your orifices.
Keep
It's always a
okay.
good sign. So, and Agasicles, how are you, sir?
I am pretty good.
All right. I'm going to keep you on the mic, Agasicles, because the Pix Plays report out, the assignment was kind of a holdover from a month ago in terms of gaming subscription services. But in that time, you, sir, have picked up a new box, or at least a controller and a Chromecast, while everybody else is canceling their 3-month Pro Stadia subscription. You've decided to jump on board. So, one, why now? And two, how's it been going?
Yeah, well, I now have 7 months of Stadia Pro. So I want to cover a little bit because part of this podcast is we talk about gamer experience and we talk about the news details. Part of it I've always felt is also, I don't know that it's a real word, but I refer to it as consumerism, which is like the study or the topic of how consumers interact with suppliers on the free market.
As an economics major, consumerism is an actual word.
Okay, I don't know if I apply it correctly.
Go.
So I've always been thoughtful, mindful, and I've written a lot about, what is your experience interacting with different companies, right? So I wrote and talked a lot about the 2010 experience that finally caused me to walk away from the Xbox. And I want to talk a little bit about this experience with Stadia. So you guys have been tangentially aware of it. Some of you have seen me flare to anger, but haven't really tracked the whole thing. So, in general, what happened was I got my buddy code from Osiris Prime. Thank you very much, Prime. Finally got around to kind of starting it to look at it from a review perspective, and enabled my account. I am a Google Pay user, so I had it wired to Google Pay. The first night playing Destiny 2, I authorized and connected it to my Google Pay account, specifically to buy like $20 of like in-game like silver or whatever, because I just want I'm used to having my Titans all decked out because of playing on other systems, and now here I am playing basically the new light version of Destiny 2, and my Titan like has nothing. So I was like, I want to dress him up a little bit, and pay a little bit into the whole Stadia / Bungie pot. Well, the first time I entered the CVV code on the debit card that is associated through Google Pay, I didn't enter it correctly, so it kicked the purchase back. I re-entered it, it entered correctly, the purchase took. Now, 4 days later, my entire Google ecosystem was disabled, down, and shot all to heck. I was kicked out of Gmail, Google Maps, Google Music, everything that I use from a Google perspective.
It took 4 days?
Yes. Well, because
seems like
I made the purchase on a Saturday night. So, of course, automated clearinghouses and banking systems don't run overnight on Sundays. Or Sundays, or overnight Saturdays, or overnight Sundays. So generally, if you do bank transactions, you typically don't see them hit until first thing Tuesday morning. Still a delay, right? That kind of took me aback. So Wednesday of that week, like I said, I woke up. I'm a heavy metro work, in a highly urban, one of the major urban population areas in the country. I commute into it every day in my personal vehicle. I am super highly dependent on all of my Google stuff. If that's the daily driver that I'm carrying, working. I need Google Maps. I need Google Music. I need Google Now or Google Assistant, because I always check the weather. Like, I am heavily dependent on Google for those first 2 to 3 hours a day. Nothing worked. So basically, I couldn't do anything until I stopped, fixed it, right, and then got everything restored. So I did that to the best of my ability. Later, what I found out was that it was this purchase in Destiny 2 on Google Stadia that triggered that whole cascade. I let it go by for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I finally, like very late at night, so that probably wasn't smart, but finally started up a chat with Google Stadia support to try and undork this. I got a lot of things that weren't passing the smell test from the first Google support rep, who was like, so it's a Google Pay problem. I'm like, dude, it's not a Google Pay problem. Like, Google Pay works for me on everything else. I've had no issues with it. This is a Stadia back-end problem. So he's like, well, let me get you over to the Google Pay guy. Like, I was literally on chat with the Google Pay guy for all of about 30 seconds. He was like, this is not a Google Pay problem. Let me get you back to the Stadia guys. So they got me back to the Stadia guys. The second guy who came on, again, as far as I was concerned, was vastly misdiagnosing what was going on. Where I started to get aggravated was, and Prime, fortunately, was up at that time of night gaming. I'm pretty sure he was on Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch.
Probably.
So he was like, "Hey, do you know the person who gave you the buddy pass?" And I'm like, "Yes, I didn't just get it off some random stranger who get right." And I was like, he's like, did that person return their kit? And I'm like, you guys are Google. Like, do you not know? Like, clearly in some back end of a database, you should know. You should be able to trace a buddy code, right, back to its what we call in the database world its foreign key, right, and back to the original, pro account. So I was frustrated by being asked that question. I was further frustrated by being asked if Prime had returned it, because I'm like, again, wouldn't you guys know? And we went on, and I was like, look, I said, we started this whole thing off from the wrong conjecture. Like, this shouldn't be the diagnostic path that you went down. I got really frustrated when the first guy said, hey, do you have a number I can call you back at? I said, yes, my Google Voice number, right? And he was like, oh yeah, and he seemingly knew what it was. The second guy who came on, he asked me the same question. I said, my Google Voice number. He's like, we don't have any phone number connected for you. I'm like, it's my Google Voice number, right? Like, you know who I am. You know what my Google account is. You should know my Google Voice number. He's like, yeah, I can't see it on any of my screens here. And I'm like, and I think maybe some of you guys expressed my frustration. I'm like, I'm pretty sure, because I have emails that hit like that Google account. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that Google knows what my Twitter account name is and my Facebook account name is, and tons of other data associated with my Facebook and Twitter account. I'm like, but Google doesn't have its systems tied well enough together that the Stadia guys can't see my Google Voice number. So at any rate, I went through a lot of frustration trying to get this thing corrected because my big thing was, well, first of all, when I went back into Stadia at that point, there was no option for me to even pay to resubscribe. Like my account was just nuked. It just said refund. It just said pro account refunded. There was no way to get to any other option to administer it. So I was like, look, I'm willing to just pay $10 just to get the account restored so I can get up and going, but I couldn't even do that. So we went round and round and round and round, and finally, and this went over into email. It couldn't be solved that night. It took them several days of back and forth, blah blah blah. And mainly, I was going through this just because I wanted to report out on like the experience.
I didn't realize that this was so involved. I remember you saying you had troubles with it, but man.
Oh yeah, this was like this was 2 or 3 hours that night, which kept me up to like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then it was probably like Wednesday. Like so, this was a Saturday night, and it was probably again like Wednesday or Thursday that they were getting it fixed. Now, I asked for some things in return for my troubles, much like occurred when I went through my 4 Red Rings of Death. I got free games and stuff from Microsoft. I actually asked for a pro account, for a pro kit, for a founder's kit. They were not willing to part with a founder's kit, but I did get $30 of credit, which I was like, well, I mean that's the 3 free months that I should have gotten from the Buddy Pass, or I would have gotten in a founder's kit. So I got that in Google Play Store credit. So I got that, and then playing around with it, I was comfortable enough with how well it operated. Again, part of this is because essentially we're gaming journalists and we cover this stuff. I was at a point where at least I believed enough in the fidelity of the system that I was fine going ahead and ordering a premium kit, which is a thing that I don't even think is really advertised or people know about. I also dislike its limitations because the only controller you can order with it is the white controller. There is no other option to mix and match a different color controller with it. Now, so there's a little bit of remorse there because if I had just ordered if I hadn't canceled my founder's order, I think with the founder's order, what I had on the order was the full $130 kit and a second controller, which was a Wasabi controller, which is what.
Oh, I had the Wasabi controller, as well.
Right. So it was 4 days of monkeying around with those guys. Again, I was frustrated with the front end of the experience, but I would say the second half of the experience once they started reaching, because I was blowing them out on Twitter. They kind of tried to reach me mid tirade and say, "Hey, just DM us," right? And I was like, "Oh no, I'm finishing this story on Twitter." So, but I got, they had me fill out a survey form or whatever. They got me in touch with a rep via email. Like I said, I got the $30 of free credit, and it got resolved, and my account was re-enabled. So
that is a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What was the point of asking them if I had returned my founder's kit?
Their belief, and this was another point of frustration, their belief was that if you had returned your founder's kit, that the system was wired some kind of way to either have bounced my Buddy Pass since you had it, or I think it was that I think would have been frustrating because if you ordered a founder's kit and then I enabled my Buddy Pass 2 months later and you returned it, I should still get the 2 months, right? The whole point of it, and this is what's silly. Well, the whole point of it is that you hope that after I finish my 3 months trial in Buddy Pass, even if you return your kit, that there's a potential that another customer might buy in. So why would you nuke their access? But I think it would have been but I could have followed the logic that if you had returned your founder's kit and I had not enabled my Buddy Pass, right, and I had never started my trial, then that may have been cause to prevent it from starting up. But what frustrated me is at the end of the whole thing, the guy came back and was like, "Hey, we think what it is because you entered the CVV code incorrectly." I'm like, I understand that. I said, but your system, like, so clearly when I entered the CVV code incorrectly, your system didn't take the purchase, right? Because it did and should have kicked the purchase back. But at the point in the chronology where I entered the correct CVV code and it had accepted the order, what your system shouldn't do is it shouldn't see a sequence of 2 transactions and then disable all of my Google accounts because an earlier thing didn't process, but a later thing was corrected and did. Like the system should have deconflicted that. And he kept saying, well, it's a Google, and I'm like, it's not a Google Pay thing because I've had a Google Pay thing on a different service, like, failed a process or whatever, and then like made a change or whatever and processed it, and like my accounts have never been disabled. I'm like, I think what it is your guys' Stadia backend isn't as tightly integrated in the proper way with Google Pay. Again, that's a little bit outside the gaming thing. Not quite. Again, I think gamers should understand how purchasing systems work, since all you guys are running around tying your credit cards, right, and debit cards and whatnot to, these gaming subscription services. At any rate, it got fixed. It was trying. It was frustrating. I feel like at the end of the day, I'd kind of say Google kind of came through, right? Like it didn't start out good, but I would say, and they didn't counter the bad experience up front with an overwhelmingly positive, second half experience. But overall, they kind of corrected it, right? And paid me a little bit for my trouble. So yeah,
jump ahead in the story.
Yeah.
How's the experience?
Right.
Like once you actually could start playing.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with your experience?
Yes. Yeah. And there's a detectable. So I've played it in 2 ways. I've played it on PC, and I've played it on my Samsung 40-inch 4K TV. On PC, there's a slight loss in fidelity, right? That's detectable. Like I can see that there are times. Essentially, I would love to understand how this technology works, but you can see at times that there's greater pixel density fill in than at other times. I mean, what it essentially does is when the signal strength starts to drop, what it does is it reduces the amount of texture fill on your screen, and so things start to degrade to a point where you can kind of see a certain degree of pixelation. That I'm kind of sort of okay with. I think some of that too was also I don't know that Bungie has updated the original Destiny assets that you go through when you play New Light, because when it flips over to Destiny 2, I'm like, oh, this is an incredibly higher resolution and better graphics. So I think that was part of it. But regardless, even on Destiny 2, I do still see like the pixel density drop, right, as the signal strength increases and decreases. I joke about it for this patch upgrade, but when it comes to, just to talk a little bit about the convenience, when it comes to the live streaming experience, right? The things we put ourselves through. So, like, if I have a plan to live stream, right, on a school night, on a work night, and I'm say going to play Fortnite, right, or Rainbow Six, or Call of Duty, any of these first-person shooter games that for whatever reason, I think largely because of network code and whatnot, and their interactivity with multiplayer and server-side pieces, like, can often have these incredibly large patches that come in, one, sometimes out of nowhere, but two, also in close association with like a new season, right? And we've had a new season of Destiny 2. In some of our GX shows earlier this year, we, Prime and I were engaged on Fortnite Chapter 2, Season 2. And when I'm going to live stream that game, like my paradigm is I have to get up, I have to do whatever I'm doing in the morning, right, get kids ready, work out, whatever. In the midst of that, I have to find time to boot the system up that I plan on playing on. Sometimes I have to boot that up and the streaming PC, because sometimes in order to get the screen to come on, right, on the system I'm going to be gaming on, I've got to light off the streaming PC because the capture card that's connected through it has to have power to it in order to see this, right? So sometimes I got to light off 2 PCs, right? And I have to initiate that patch in the morning before I go to work, just because, as I come in through the door, get the kids put to bed, spend time with my wife. Sometimes by the time I get down here, like I've got like a very small window to get live, right? So being on Stadia and not having that even like cognitive load on my brain in the morning that I'm planning on live streaming is an amazingly freeing experience, right? That the night that Destiny 2 is it Destiny 2 season 10? Is that what's going right now? Oh, I think you're muted. I
Can
think
keep talking. Yes, I'm obviously totally muted. That's okay. Yeah. No, it's Season of the Worthy. I'm not sure if it's season 10 or not, but
okay.
yeah.
So
But it
that
launched on Tuesday.
right. So Tuesday night I had planned a live stream. I just did my regular thing, and I just went and I came back. And like I told you guys, like in the chat, right when I started up Destiny 2 on Stadia, like the new splash screen for the new season was just there. That is, there were no gymnastics. I didn't have to bring up Steam, and then right? It's pretty awesome. And then when you talk about where that content is, right between there and my Chromecast Ultra and a Chrome or whatever, like um, uh, it's just there, right? Whenever I go to it, so it's been pretty awesome. The notion that it's a $130 kit, and then if I deduct the 3 months of the subscription off of that and say it's a $100 kit, the notion that it's a $100 kit, I'm playing on my 4K TV, and it's in 4K, right? Like that's to me a pretty amazing experience when I compare that to say the original PlayStation 4, which I still have hooked up, which was a $399 machine and doesn't render in 4K, right? And when I go to play Destiny 2 stuff, like you hear the Blu-ray drive like churn and the hard drive like killing itself trying to load everything, right? That's a good value proposition for me to have that alternative and that diversification. And I think this one the pro games are kicking in now. So generally, I don't want to say this as if I'm committing to it on paper, but generally you're getting a couple of free games. I think each month. That are adding into your pro game library that you always have access to as long as you continue your subscription. I have not liked all of them that have come up, but there are ones that are coming in that are like squarely in my wheelhouse. So, for instance, the 2019 version of Grid, and this is what I get out of these subscription services to a large extent. It's a game that I skipped, even though I'm a big racing game fan, right? Now I don't have to worry about going off and paying for it or waiting for it on discount. It's on there. It has a 40-player multiplayer mode online where that might be an incredibly difficult thing to find and get into with a decent group of people on PC or consoles. But on Stadia, because the community is so... it's kind of like we're all in the same like cow pasture, right? We're not like all off right on different corners of the gaming sphere. That's a place where that mode is played pretty heavily, and it's pretty easy to find a game to get into. There's actually a couple of Stadia Discords out there, and one of them, like they put out announcements, like when there's going to be an event like that. So I've had a pretty awesome time doing it. As far as all the negative press that came out about like bandwidth and people not being able to play, and again, as I expressed a few episodes ago, I think gamers need to understand how network technology works. And what's feasible like in their home and not put that all on Google. As far as my experience goes, I've been able to play the game at full res and concurrently live stream it out at 7 megabits per second and concurrently bring the live stream down on a monitoring PC, right? So I've had two bandwidth, inputs coming down and a bandwidth output going out and have had, essentially zero problem. I had one hiccup the first night where the game broke connection, but I was able to quickly restore it. I had a momentary hiccup, and this is the thing that's very interesting, because I think this is in some ways better than playing on a console or a PC. On a console or a PC, when Destiny 2 crashes, you're done. You got to reboot that system, generally, and when you get restored, you've just lost whatever progress you had made in that mission or whatever, right? So, in Stadia, if you drop a connection, you've got 10, it depends on what you're on. It's 10 minutes when I was playing on PC. It's 15 minutes when I was going to the Chromecast Ultra. But when I restored the game, it put me back in exactly the same spot in exactly the same mission when I reconnected. And I dynamically picked up from exactly where I was. That does not happen on any other platform that Destiny 2 is on. You break that connection, you wind up back in orbit, right, are in the Citadel. So that again to me is really impressive.
Cool. I mean, it's really interesting to hear that experience because in some ways, even though you had the customer service nightmare of the back end, but the functionality of the actual experience itself sounds like it's been really positive. And I think this will come back into play later at the end of the show as well, is that as we start, looking ahead to transitioning to generations, your discussion there about kind of the cost value of Stadia suddenly changes a little bit as well, right? It's no longer the box that we all have sitting on a entertainment center somewhere. It's that investment aspect of do we move on to the next piece, or if I'm going to buy something new, part of the reason Stadia in the gaming media has had a challenge has been that discussion of rebuying everything. But now, if you're moving to the next generation, you're no longer rebuying everything. It's buying something new, and then it becomes a question of is Stadia a viable platform within there? And that it's great to have some counterpoints to some of the general narrative of people kind of forgetting Stadia exists or making jokes about its launch or not launch. But to hear that the technology is functional and successful, that's great. So thanks for sharing your experience, I guess, because that's valuable, hopefully, to a number of people, not just myself.
Yeah, that was.
Osiris Prime, go ahead.
I just want to say real quick because I had it for those 3 months when it first came out, and
Do you
the
still have
connection.
the Chromecast and the controller?
Yeah, I
Or
kept everything. I didn't return or anything. I'll
okay,
probably.
so
I mean,
really, all you'd have to do is resubscribe then in order
yeah,
to get back in. Okay,
yeah. The only reason I canceled was just because the data was because I have a cap. The data was just too much for me, at least because I have all these other systems that I'm working on and downloading stuff on. This not Switch. I mean, isn't super huge, but the Switch and Xbox. There's the games are pretty heavy or pretty big, so it kind of eats up the data. But yeah, just technology wise, I just never had problems with it. It was always solid. I rarely broke a connection, even down here in my basement where where I game. I never did get the street to get to streaming. I don't know if it was super easy at the beginning. I think you had to kind of jump through hoops a little bit. I don't know if it got a little easier for you now, Agasicles, or if it's just kind of a regular setup like you normally would do. Um,
Yeah. I didn't do anything like supposedly there are rumors that people have seen in the APK code that is indicating Stadia integration with YouTube, and when that's enabled, what will happen is you'll be the Stadia servers are here, you're down here, you're getting the data down and playing the game on your PC. Your live stream, though, is coming out of a YouTube data center and based on communications between the Stadia server blade servers and the YouTube blade. So there's nothing coming down from you to get back out to your live stream, and so you don't have any right. But for this, what I did is I had enough bandwidth that I brought the game down, and then I just live streamed it out the same way that I usually would with a capture card and a dedicated streaming PC.
right, and that's not live yet, right? The YouTube integration.
The YouTube integration is not live as
Stream.
far as I know. Yeah, Google Apps, they could. I mean, the thing may have updated 5 times since the last time I heard about that, and it may be in there now. But as far as the last time
It's
I
not.
know, it wasn't in there yet.
Yeah. So yeah, that part, like I said, I didn't do, but it was always pretty solid. Playing Destiny, and I played a little bit of Farming Simulator when that was free on there. So it was actually pretty solid and looked great. I have a 4K monitor here that I wear that I use, so it's gonna look good on there. But I tried it like I think I mentioned on the Surface and on my phone and stuff, and it was playing good. It played great.
cool.
Did
Well,
you try
let's
anything
stay on the.
outside your house by any
Go
chance?
ahead.
Sorry.
No, please.
No, I haven't. And so my use cases that I anticipate when I do get around to that is I do have a Chromebook. Like I'm interested in like again as I mentioned like being able to take that on travel and not have to lug like a big gaming laptop with its like 3.5 pound power supply.
Yeah.
Provided the bandwidth is sufficient, right? That would be my optimal use case. And to not. I mean, I like my Switch, but I probably need to at least when I travel, typically need to at least have like a Chromebook with me. So again, it would just be nice to be able to say, I'm just going to take my Chromebook and that's what I'm going to game on, and not have to take my Chromebook and my Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Nice. Osiris, stay on the mic here, and we've talked so much about Game Pass and the value of Game Pass, and this week we've got Ori and the Will of the Wisp that has come out day and date on Game Pass, whether it's PC. We've got Swiss playing on Game Pass now on PC. We've
PC.
played, Bleeding's Edge, cross PC and Xbox. So we've talked about the value of Game Pass, but let's use this as a transition into kind of our playlist and round robin time. You played a little Yakuza 0 on Game Pass as one of
Yes.
their new releases this month.
Yes, I did. So finally, this has come to Xbox because it was, I believe, basically all PlayStation before, maybe PC too. I'm not sure if it was on
The
PC.
it's eventually gone multi-platform, but originally it was an exclusive.
Yeah. So yeah, this is probably one of the games that I always look really interesting to me. That might have got me to play buy a PlayStation. I think they might have started on the 3, but 4 too. Um, but it's kind of a jacked up Shenmue in some
It's
ways.
exactly what it is, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
lineage there is very much from Shenmue.
Yeah. So you're kind of this guy in the Yakuza gang or clan, whatever you want to call it, depending on who you're talking to. Kind of lower ranks, and you're kind of well. I'm only a few hours in, but I'm assuming you're trying to work up to work your way up, or there's other kind of story bits that I don't want to kind of give away right now. But you're trying to get some revenge on some certain things that happened during the gameplay, and trying to do other things. But the core gameplay is kind of just there's fighting mechanics obviously in there that you can upgrade. There's like a skill tree that you can do different moves and learn different combos. But it just comes some kind of like silly things that happen in there. Like you just do karaoke all of a sudden, while you're doing missions. It's kind of a side thing. I think at one point you can actually play some old Sega arcade games from some of the podcasts that I heard recently. I haven't gotten to that
Right,
part yet.
that's very much a Shenmue type
Yeah.
of piece there. Yep.
There's all kinds of like little just like machines and like vending machines you can go into and buy food, or you can buy little trinkets and stuff like that. So it's just kind of this like quirky kind of like I said, like a jacked up Shenmue. But it's pretty interesting though. I mean, the acting is very well. It is subtitled, so they speak all in Japanese. And this is Japanese. This Tokyo 1988, I believe, is the year. So back in the day. So still the 80s, and we're just about to get into 90s. So you kind of have just the haircuts and and the clothing and stuff. You can kind of tell it was back in the day. But it's just really interesting. I'm really getting into the story. The fighting mechanics is actually not too bad. There's a lot of like combos and stuff you can learn and do. So it's actually pretty cool. It's not just like a button. You can button mash if you want, but you kind of have to you know, learn some of the combos and stuff, and you can kind of switch styles in mid game or mid fight as you're fighting, which actually helped a lot when I was doing like the first boss that I encountered, because he was just like whooping me like something fierce, and then finally I was like, all right, let me go back and learn what actually look what I've learned all the combos and stuff. So once I actually figured that out, especially the switching of the styles. Because when you switch styles, you can do different things. Like in the one style, you can actually grab people, and punch them and throw them or whatever. And the other one you can't, but you can dodge a lot better or a lot faster. So they kind of counter the styles. So you're not just going to be running your way through the game, running through everybody. So it's kind of cool just how the game's laid out. About let's say about 3 hours ish or so in, so pretty early. But I'm just hoping it just kind of keeps building on itself. And like I said, there's that skill tree, so there's like a ton of stuff I can unlock and do. So it'll be interesting to see what else they kind of throw at me. And it's kind of weird too in the beginning of the story. There's actually certain parts that, and this is only like a couple hours in, where it's like, wait, is the game gonna end or is this guy gonna die? Because it's kind of just the way the story is kind of laid out. So I think that was one of the strong points that I heard from this game, from back even back in the day, that the story is like really good. So it's really interesting so far.
Cool. That's good. So you think you're going to stick with it, or at least it sounds like the story and the gameplay has hooked you enough to kind of keep going with it.
Yes, yeah, I'm definitely gonna stick with it and keep going.
Nice. Well, I will stick on the Game Pass piece here as we move. As I have so many games to talk about, gentlemen, and all relatively new releases. So I'm going to kind of skip through some things relatively quickly. But first, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, 4K, Xbox One X. Oh, it is a beautiful game, right? I mean, there's been some press coverage out there
Game,
about.
Game of the Year contender.
Uh, I'm saying beautiful game in terms of graphic art style. Um, I don't know that I'm in far enough to love it in terms of a gameplay. And truthfully, I, after the first hour or so, I don't know that I'm hooked on it yet. I did wasn't a, I appreciated the artistic quality of the first one, but it never really grabbed me in terms of kind of that Metrovania, and I kind of like Metrovanias.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you play Celeste?
yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Okay. All
Celeste.
right. So
Yep.
you have that comparative framework to
Well,
think
and I
through.
think it's probably closer to, you know, it's closer because Celeste is not. It's little Celeste. I feel is a little more Meat Boyish than it is Metrovania. Um, where Ori is a little more Hollow Knight, Time Spinner, those types of Axiom Verge, a little bit more in that Metrovania piece, because there's easily things that you can see that that at some point you're going to get a skill that gets you there, but you're still kind of exploring, and the map system is similar to that vein as well. Um, yeah, it is after the first. I mean, it starts slow. It is a lot of kind of animated, not animated, but in-game, rendered in-engine cutscenes that kind of tell you this beautiful. It's almost like a Pixar-esque. Like the first 15 minutes feels like this should be a Pixar short before the next blockbuster. It's cute, it's charming, it tugs on your heartstrings a little bit, but it has a little bit of action and you know, heart pounding excitement, and then kind of launches you into this game. It is, that the whole opening piece before you get out of kind of the tutorial area is just a joy to behold. And then you're in the game, and the game it runs well. It is beautiful. It has had a patch, day one patch that kind of seems to fix some of the things where people were having problems on uh, S's and original Xboxes. So there is that. Yeah, it is again another value of Game Pass is that if you have Game Pass in any capacity, Xbox or PC, this is just one more kind of free day and date game that you can play. So enjoying that. One game that I am not in, that I did not enjoy as much, and I'm gonna double, put these together in kind of that cartoony vein, is Snack World Dungeon Crawler from. It's on the Switch. Snack World is a cartoon. It is a Japanese animation cartoon. It's not really anime, but it's in that kind of vein. It's a level 5 game, so it's got some cartoony elements to it, but it ultimately is just a dungeon crawler Diablo-esque type of piece. There's some tongue-in-cheek pieces to it. This is a Switch exclusive. Came out last year. There's some mobile. It feels very mobile as well in terms of game design. There is for a Switch game, uh, for a $40 Switch game, there's a whole lot of mobile trappings in terms of treasure chests at the end of a quest, depending on your login, multiple different login bonuses, all kinds of different. There's multiple currencies and things to buy, things to craft. If this was a Nintendo mobile game, I think it would work really, really well. It's in that kind of what was the Dragon Grade? The Dragalia Lost, Nintendo mobile product, right? Is this? this feels like it should be more of a mobile game than a $40 Switch game. Um, I tried it. It's cute. I could see where it could be
So are you saying for
for a
$40?
younger audience.
So are you saying
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
for $40 you did not get the whole game?
No, you did. You get the full game, right? You're not paying things. You get the full game, but there's just a lot of kind of sub economic systems within it. Throughout the uh, first couple hours. But again, relatively straightforward, relatively simple. I think the art style works for it. It's level 5, but it's. I found myself thinking as I returned it to GameFly after a couple days. I found myself thinking that if my kids were younger, if they were in elementary school, that this would be I could see them getting into this, right? It is in that same kind of Diablo-esque without necessarily the kind of hard gothic edges to it. It's a Saturday morning cartoon dungeon crawler. And that actually is probably a good way to describe it, right? So I'm just not the target audience for that. And I'm okay acknowledging that.
So I'm going to steal some thunder away from Dragon Ball Z Kakarot or Kakarot.
Kakarot.
So, so essentially, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the first actual release of significance in 2020, right?
Yeah, I would
Right.
say. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything that would be.
For Xbox?
I mean, for the whole gaming industry.
Oh,
I would say, based on what I've played for the last month, I would say Dreams could be up there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's a different type of thing.
Yeah, but I would definitely still slide. I mean, just for the progression and evolution of design in the gaming industry, like delivering
Yes.
a thing that has
There
never
is
really
not
been done before.
there's not a big release that has come
Yeah,
out.
but it's not. But even despite that significance, that thing has not made a big splash in terms of the voice track, of gaming industry coverage, kind of around the horn. So yeah, so 3 games that have had some degree of traction. If you talk about the sales of Kakarot, the artistic design and evolution of Dreams, and now I would claim the commercial and artistic viability of Ori. Man, this year was really slow. Like really slow.
It really has been.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
it's
And
kind of like that last year, though, wasn't it? I mean, yeah.
it feels like last year was slow because we had collapses. You had Anthem, you had Anthem in February, you had the Division 2 in March.
Yeah.
I think there was kind of a steady drumbeat of releases.
Yeah, I think the release pace of last year, while maybe slow, picked up to a pretty big fever. I think last year there was a feeling that it was slow because so many things had piled up to be released in that March timeframe that all fell apart and all got delayed.
Yeah.
But in general, I mean, it was a slow burn at the start, but I seem to remember us just being hammered by releases in summer because a lot of those things that had gotten delayed slipped into the summer. So I felt like last year, definitely like second quarter and on, was fairly busy. This year it's been like you could hear a pin drop most release weeks for games.
Although that starts to change now. We get Doom Eternal. Next week we've got some baseball games coming out. We get Animal Crossing. Neo 2 is coming. So we're starting to get in. Those things that were pushed back are coming now, right? I think we had some releases that were supposed to be coming and kind of kept getting pushed back.
Well, it'll be interesting. I'd like to revisit this question in a month or 2 months because my feeling is it's still kind of drought-like in that I want to say the things that are coming out and the things you mentioned are all exclusives. So it only does some good for players on that particular platform. Like, so Dreams is an exclusive.
Yep.
Ori is a console exclusive. MLB The Show is a console exclusive, right? So
Neo, I think, is only PlayStation.
Yeah, at least
And
for
then you
its
get
initial
Animal Crossing,
release.
which is
It's
only
only Nintendo.
PlayStation.
Right.
Then you also get, Gears Tactics, which is only PlayStation. Then you get Final Fantasy Remake, which is only PlayStation. Right? There's a lot of kind of exclusives there.
Yes, yeah, different platforms, but you said PlayStation for all of them. But
Oh,
Yeah. You said Gear
sorry.
Tactics PlayStation.
I just got into the rhythm. I was like,
Just got
okay, and
confused.
that's another exclusive, and another. You get one too. Everybody, look under your chair. You get an exclusive.
Well, even looking
Except
at
for
next
Stadia.
month, even
So
looking at next month, yeah, it's not. I mean, you got Resident Evil 3, Final Fantasy 7 remake. I mean, I guess those are big. Predator Hunting Grounds, which is PS4 exclusive.
yeah, no, I mean
Gear,
it's been a.
Minecraft
I feel
Legends.
like for me, and this is where I felt like I'm having a hard time parsing how much of this is my own gaming experience and how much of this is the industry at this point. But I have, I've bounced around on things. I have not really, I've gone back. I've played a lot of Madden. I've played a lot of the game I've actually played a ton of is a mobile game. I don't feel like there's been anything really this last season of Destiny hasn't drawn me in. I'm interested now in the story of Season of the Worthy with the giant almighty ship that the Cabal had in the story of Destiny 2 that was supposed to eat up the sun is going to come and crash into Earth, and so you've got to try to stop it. Right, so there's some kind of narrative tie to get me back in, but I really have not. The game I've been playing daily since the end of January has been this mobile game Retro Bowl. So it's on iOS, it's on Android, and it's also on Congregate. I have been. It's Tecmo Bowl with some touchscreen controls. It's that same kind of art style, but there is you kind of drag your finger to pass, or at least drag it back to pass and aim and let go. Uh, Running is relatively straightforward. You swipe the screen to move up and down. But then there's an off season. You've got a salary cap, you've got a draft, you've got morale, you hire coaches, so there's this whole other piece that goes on. You can get, you can move from team to team.
is
Uh,
it on Apple Arcade?
no, it's not on Apple
Oh,
Arcade.
okay.
It's a free, it's free to download, and you get 4 games for free. And then if you want to unlock the whole game, it's 99 cents. It is like we've returned to the year 2000 or 2010, where all you need to do is buy the game once and you've unlocked everything. Um, so I've been glad to pay the developer. It's a one-man team with a little bit of support coming out from other people. I've been glad to give him multiple dollars across 2 different platforms because you know I could play the whole game for $1. And at this point, I have between multiple devices, I think I've put in, let's say about 30 seasons, 35 seasons. Each game is, quarters or 2 minutes and they all click by pretty quick. But it's one of those where you can play a game in about 10, 15 minutes at the most, about 10 minutes for a game. So it's been a fun experience. It's been fun to go back to that. So Retro Bowl and Dreams, as I was saying before, I've kind of dabbled in. And Dreams almost feels like its own platform to a certain degree, right? Like in some ways that I haven't had any deep experience, but it's been kind of it's gaming tapas, where I can kind of go in, see what's kind of hot or new, and play around with it a little bit. A lot of times it's kind of janky. Sometimes it's kind of funny. Um, but artistically, it's always interesting to see what people have done. And it's one of those where it feels like it's something where I want to keep coming back to Dreams to see how it develops and what's there. But it really works for if I'm not diving into a big kind of grindy loot game. Oftentimes I'm bouncing between games, and so Dreams gives me one game to kind of bounce between a bunch of different game experiences on.
But
So
does Dreams have just? It's kind of like Mario Maker. You can go in there and just download stuff. Download.
yes, yep, and it's got a whole lot better of a search to find stuff. You can tag things with different things. There's a website where you can actually look stuff up and favorite it, and kind of put up a playlist together. So
you mean it has a more robust online and internet implementation than a
I
Nintendo game?
I know it's shocking.
For
I,
shame.
I hate to dispel any perceptions there, but yes it does. So um, before let's move on. Agasicles, you only have one game, but you've talked about a number of games on Stadia. But what else have you been playing?
Well, to kind of connect to the conversation we were having before, like it's a great backlog year. Um, and just to round out, another thing that connects back to that same thing about Destiny 2 is since playing on Stadia, I started a Destiny 2 campaign with a new character. I've put in maybe 7.5 hours. I'm almost done with the Red War campaign. Um, and I've done the same amount of content. The big difference is there's a lot of wait time loading screen stuff that I don't know if it's attributable to entirely to Stadia. I think some of it's the Destiny 2 team cleaning stuff up. But I shouldn't just say that. Not just the Red War campaign, but that introductory part from Destiny. I'm almost, a gameplay segment that took me, I think, maybe 22 to 24 hours when I first played it. I'm almost done in like 8. Just because there's a lot of like travel, loading screen, like the mission ends, but you have to transit. You couldn't land directly at a mission. You have to land at a nearby drop point and then like speeder bike over. So that's been a wonderful experience. The other thing I've been playing though is Dirt 4, and this kind of goes back to the previous Pix Plays assignment. Where we were supposed to play something on Xbox Game Pass. Again, Dirt 4 is a game that is available on Xbox Game Pass. I already own the game on Steam, but I had just really like started it when we did the last report out, so I actually played probably about another 24 hours total of time in Dirt 4 since that report out, and came to enjoy it even more and more the more I played it. I played it on wheel and pedals. Great physics model. It turns out I thought that it had like a dumbed down, squishier version of the physics model from Dirt Rally, the preceding game. Um, it actually is the exact same physics engine, but this is just the quite frankly the amazing talent that exists at Codemasters in their way to like take the same physics engine that from the previous game many people complained about because it was too difficult and too realistic. I heard another podcast talk. I won't, claim this as my own, but they talked about, or not another podcast, but actually a article in Ars Tech. I think an article in Ars Tech that talks about how a game can be realistic. Realistic physics engines don't inherently need to be difficult to play. Right? There's a way to implement an elegant and realistic physics model, but still make the game accessible, which is a term I hate. I really don't like using it because I feel like accessibility should be reserved for other things. But it was an approachable game. It plays wonderfully on wheel and pedals, and tons of variants across like the different terrains and the different stages. Really starts to stack on the difficulty as you get later on in the more advanced championships, like the degree of busyness that you experience just with wheel inputs and the way I drive with both feet on the pedals at the same time. Like there are some of those stages that I'm just like it's like a hamster, like going back and forth, switching off between acceleration and braking. So just a really wonderful experience. Like I said, I put it in probably about 25. Well, I definitely put in 25 hours total. I was still not done with the first championship, and I think there's like 6 the full blown championships from like the lower level ranking leagues up into the last ranking league. So it's a large amount of content that really keeps you fairly busy, and a pretty wonderful experience for the amount I paid for the game.
Nice. So speaking about the amount you paid for a game, Osiris, talk to us about the free to download Call of Duty Warzone. One, it's a giant piece of content. As somebody who just downloaded it today at 96 gigs for Xbox, what do we all get with that? And how much of what are the different modes? What have you played? How's your experience been?
Yeah, so I think you're downloading like the whole game basically. Like the whole like single player, multiplayer, all of it. But if you don't have the game already, you're just going to be able to play Warzone part, which is the battle royal part. Excuse me. And within that Warzone, there's two different modes. There's plunder, where you're fighting with all the other teams to get the most cash, basically, and you're constantly respawning when you die in this game mode. So I don't, as far as I know, there's no limits. So you just at the end of the round or time limit. I haven't played it yet, unfortunately, so I can't really say what how they measure the time or anything. But at the end of that round, you have to have the most cash. So you just find cash from killing people or just finding loot crates and stuff around the map. So there's
Are
that,
there
and then there.
locations to go to grab the cash? I mean, this almost sounds like one of the. It sounds like Battlefield Hardline heist, where you were trying to grab the cash and get back to, back to your base, or is it merely it's the cash is the equivalent of like kill confirmed and grabbing tags from somebody?
I think it's both. Like
Okay.
I said, I haven't played it yet, unfortunately, and I only read a little bit about it. I haven't seen any video or anything, so it's mostly just from reading about. But it sounds like, yeah, you can get cash from people and from like the crates, and I think there's like special crates, within the world that obviously gonna get like a whole lot more money from it. So um, I have to try that. I don't know. I'll probably jump into it at least like once or twice just to see how it is. Like I said, you can respawn, so it's more about getting all that cash instead of how many kills you have. And then obviously the other mode is battle royal mode, where this time there's 150 people. It's a fairly large map. It's a pretty big map, with different areas from the Modern Warfare games throughout the years. But I'm really digging this battle royal map. It reminds me a lot of PUBG, just because you just kind of get tense from this, like with Fortnite, and I'm trying to think of maybe another one, even Blackout, which was Call of Duty, Black Ops 3, I believe.
It was
Um,
It was four,
was
right?
it
It was
four?
last
I'm
year's
sorry, four.
last
Yeah,
year's Battle Royale mode. That's what I was trying to remember. It
yeah.
was
So
Blackout.
it
Okay.
was four. Yeah. It just seems more, well, kind of, I don't want to say grounded in reality, because I mean they kind of all are, but it just seems it's more serious. Like the surrounding, you're kind of in like I don't know, like Eastern European, maybe like Russian kind of a setting. So kind of everything's kind of gray and kind of run down. There's different just run down buildings and stuff like that in the map, and color palette's not the not the best, because that kind of got me with Fallout 3 back in the day, where it's just kind of gray and kind of just drab, kind of like that. But the one thing I was thinking about this today and a little bit yesterday when I was playing, it's really the sound in this game that gets me. It's like there's always something going on, like in your ear. There's people talking. You can hear shots from like super far away, or just like right next to you, or a little bit. You can hear the distance. It actually comes into play.
Well,
There's
this is the team that was best sound design for the VGAs, right?
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I'm pretty sure Call of Duty Modern Warfare won best sound design. So I mean, it tracks. I mean, it's the same
Yeah, it makes sense.
sound engine and the same team pulling it off. So
Yeah, so you got planes flying over, which there's kill streaks in this one, which is different from any other. Well, I shouldn't say any other. There's only been one other Call of Duty Battle Royale, those are pretty few and far between. But you can always hear like planes and stuff going by. You can get into helicopters, and there's cars and little four wheelers and stuff like that. The gun sound is excellent. Like I said, you can kind of hear the distance when kind of where people are. It does kind of like, if they're close enough within your map, within the little map that you have, the mini map, you can see the little blips of red, like when someone's shooting. So that kind of gives it away. So that's kind of cool. I don't think, maybe PUBG does that. I can't remember. I haven't played it in a while, but you usually don't see the ping of players. At least not Fortnite or Blackout. I don't remember it doing that either. But the loot crates themselves, they make a sound. It's almost like this kind of low hum, so you can always hear that. So it's kind of an audible thing for the loot crates, which is kind of cool. So I'm really, I
so
can't remember.
it's a low hum like in Fortnite.
Yeah, a little bit lower though,
Yeah.
even than
But I
Fortnite.
mean, but
Yeah,
just a thing where like when you're in the vicinity of one, like you can tell there's one nearby.
yeah, you can hear it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but
Oh, and
there's
it's
a lot of.
just
I'm sorry, go
while we're on the topic of sound again, confirmed best audio design from the VGAs was Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
ahead. Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot of them because you can always say those things like coming. So I don't know if they have to work on that maybe to kind of like lower that. So, but because there's been times where I can't find it. I can hear it, but I just kind of cannot find where the thing is. It might be on the roof. Sometimes you can get on the roof. Sometimes you can't. Depends like where you are. So, but yeah, I think it's mostly just kind of the tense feeling because like in Fortnite, it's kind of a maybe just kind of the comical graphics of it or the settings and stuff. I don't really get tense in that really all too much. I don't
But
really.
but there is a thing in Fortnite where there is it's a little more paced and there's build up to engagements. Call of Duty has always been this like run and gun, run around, stab somebody with a pitchfork feeling kind of game. Like, so has that changed at all with Battle Royale? Is there more of kind of a slow, methodical pace to it because you can hear. I mean, in Fortnite, you don't always sprint around because people can hear you coming from a distance. So
Right.
does Call of Duty do anything like that, or is it just like the same like tank rush, blitzkrieg kind of game that it's always been?
So far that I've played, no, it is definitely slower, and I can tell the difference even from Blackout. Like just the way you move is a lot slower. Your jumps are a lot smaller. Like you can barely even jump. Like I try to do a little jump trick like I do in Fortnite. That's not gonna work. It's not gonna work in this one. And I think even in Blackout, it wasn't too bad either. But you kind of have that slide move when you're running, and even that's like super short. Like it's not super far. Even in Blackout, I remember you can kind of slide for a good amount of a distance, but here it's like short and two. So it's definitely you definitely got to work, which kind of like in all battle royals, you got to work with your squad. So
And how about sniper rifles? Because I've always found that to also be the great unequalizer in Call of Duty is how ridiculously easy it's been to like spam sniper rifles.
so there's two that I've seen so far, and I can't remember the names right now. There's one that almost kind of looks like it almost looks like a modified handgun, kind of, but it's a sniper rifle. They call it a sniper rifle, so it's kind of interesting. That one definitely shoots, kind of quick, but still, like you can't. You have to hit them either like a couple times in the head. Even it's not just like a one shot to the head, or obviously a few times in the body. And then the other one, I think I've only gotten it once so far, and I didn't get a chance to use it, so I'm not sure how. And that one's like it's only a one shot, and then you got to reload. So, but like I said, I hadn't had a chance to use it yet, so I don't know how powerful that might be more powerful. So, because the other one kind of seems like a kind of semi-automatic kind of shooting. So, but and then as far as like the guns and stuff, so in Blackout, you're able to do like attachments and scopes and grips and all this other kind of stuff. This one is just like just plain. It kind of goes by the kind of the Fortnite model where it's just like there's different tiers. Kind of like medium and rare and epic and legendary and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice. I kind of like that because I don't have to worry about okay here I got to put this scope on or wait I can't use that scope here on this gun. So which was kind of annoying in Blackout because only certain scopes and grips and stuff worked on certain guns. But here it's a little simpler, which is fine with me. I mean, I don't find a big deal with that. It's more of a rarity thing, but um, and I think I've only seen like the legendary, which I think is like the highest is like an orange color, which is kind of like across the board. I think in all these battle royale games, which I guess is kind of nice. You don't have to remember a whole color scheme again. I've only seen them a few times that I've played. And I probably played a lot last night, and then maybe a little bit today. So I haven't like played a whole bunch. Um, so I don't know. I think they're pretty rare, so it's kind of nice that you're not just kind of Fortnite. Sometimes you find like the rare and epic stuff that kind of like all in one area. Like you'll find all these rare and epic guns, and it's like, come on, it's like, okay, that's why I got all these big powerful guns, but and this it definitely it seems a lot more spread out and not as common, so that's kind of nice. And then you have, like I said, you have kill streaks, you have obviously like grenades and stuff like that, and all these other kind of perks that you would have in like in a normal multiplayer Call of Duty game. So as far as I can tell so far, it doesn't seem overpowered, and you do have to unlock stuff as you progress. So that's kind of nice too. Which I mean, once you get past these initial like first few weeks and months, that might be kind of the bar to entry might be a little high for some people, but it's not too bad. But so even with the normal guns, I seem to be getting a lot of kills if I can kind of not necessarily sneak up on people, but kind of get the first couple shots. So that's kind of nice. And then the other one major thing. So when you die, you get thrown in the gulag, which is basically a 1v1, which is actually kind of cool. So if you win that, then you get to go back into the map and go back into your team. So that's kind of cool that they actually do that. And then once you
Do you have
die,
weapons in, or is it like a just melee combat?
they just give you
Or
like one random weapon, yeah. And
okay,
then like after a certain amount of time, you get like one like throwable type of, well, like grenade or a flashbang or something like that. So that's kind of cool.
that's a cool
Um,
addition for it. A way to kind of
yeah.
fight your way back in. Yep.
So it's not like, you die and you just gotta sit there and spectate, your team or something like that. Or even with like randoms, which is I mostly play with. I'm not gonna sit there, just watch a bunch of randoms, especially if they're just like going off and, lone wolfing, themselves. So then once you come back in, if you die again, you still can come back one more time if your team gets to like a certain what they call it, like banks or something like that. But it's basically like a loot crate-ish kind of looking thing that you can go in and you can buy your teammate back into the game. So that's kind of cool. So and you're always finding money, even in the battle royal mode. You're always finding money, not always, but I mean you can find money within the game and stuff and pick it up from players if if they've picked up stuff. And then you can buy like perks, and I don't think they're offensive, but more like a defensive. I forgot what they're called. They're not called kill streaks. I forgot what the other kind of streak was in the Call of Duty games. Basically, it's like a UAV or something like that. It's just something that you can kind of it's not an offensive thing where it's like an airstrike or something like that. So you can buy those things also.
So one of my questions, another big recurring topic on our show, is the topic of gaming time management. So my big question for you is, how do you envision playing Call of Duty as a franchise now, right? So you've got Modern Warfare, you've been playing that. Now you have Wars. You don't have Modern Warfare. Okay.
I never bought Modern Warfare. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you have Warzone. You now will have another Call of Duty that will drop later this year, and then one would assume that you're also going to be getting, So if let's just conceptualize that the next Call of Duty comes out in October, November, right? And then in late February, March of next year, assuming you get a second season of Warzone sometime. So you're playing Warzone now. You're probably going to have a second season of Warzone come out. Shortly after that, you're going to have the next full version of Call of Duty, and then somewhere in Q1 of next year, you're going to have the next season of Warzone come out. Like, how do you see yourself pivoting because of that increased battle rhythm of Call of Duty content, which I'm sure is very deliberate and I'm sure has some stochastic capitalism model behind it at Activision for earning even more money. Like, how do you see yourself kind of coming through that? Do you think you're going to hyper focus on Warzone as kind of your Fortnite alternative and like drop the mainline Call of Duty series, or?
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much did that with 4. All I did was play Blackout. I played a little bit of like just a normal multiplayer, and obviously there's no single player at all with that game. But yeah, I'm probably just going to concentrate on all the battle royale games that I'm assuming that they're going to keep putting out. I mean, I was kind of surprised that this one even had one, because it's what that came out in, like you said, October. I think late October this time, because usually it was November. Um, and I was like, I can't, I don't really want to play this one because it didn't have a battle royal at the beginning, and I've kind of shifted my multiplayer into the battle royal mode or genre, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep playing the battle royal segments for now, and I've heard good things about the single player with Modern Warfare, but I really I even when they had it when it was just regular multiplayer and the single player, I pretty much focused on multiplayer the whole time. So yeah, I'll just focus on Warzone for now, and maybe eventually play Plunder.
I wonder. I wonder what the player count looks like. Right, you were talking about Blackout from last year, right? That back to to your point, Agasicles, of kind of the annualized piece of this. That people that have invested in Blackout, and now how many of them move over to War, which kind of restarts all that progression or anything else. Although it's as a battle royale, it's a little different.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like there are people who stuck with Blackout and didn't necessarily make the shift to Modern Warfare. So that, I mean, the Blackout community I still feels like has had a much increased stick to itiveness in comparison to past years of people who typically would just you're on one version and then you immediately flip to the other.
Yeah, I mean it's a big commitment with battle royale, just because you got the seasons and stuff, and yeah, I mean you get a bunch of free stuff a lot of the times, but Like before with multiplayer, I could just flip, to the next to the next game, year after year. But battle royale is a little different, I think. Just at least the mentality that I think that some people have. Like it's like, oh, I think it's gonna bite them in the butt eventually if they keep doing it like this, where it's just like, even this one, even though they did space that out a little, at least, it's whatever. So a few months later, I think eventually people are going to get worn out, kind of like I did with the regular mainline single player, multiplayer CODs that kept coming out. So I don't know.
Well, it definitely begs the question that the possible outcome of this is that regular Call of Duty, as we know it, might be going away. Right, the Warzone model could become their core, you know, model. Or, I mean, to be quite honest, I would also be fine if, say, Warzone became their core multiplayer model, and the regular Call of Duty instances became smaller games that were just single player campaigns. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, right? I mean, that there's still a market for the box, or at least the download of that fall release of Call of Duty. But then if they get into this rhythm where in October they're releasing a Call of Duty and then they're getting kind of a franchise kind of shot in the arm in the spring of the next year, which is still in the fiscal year, right? That we are in that final quarter, that suddenly changes Activision's financials a little bit as well.
yeah, and I think we have to check in with with Swiss next week. I think Prime now becomes only the second member of the cast to have finally started playing a new game in 2020. I believe Swiss and I are still yet to engage on a bona fide new title in 2020. I think I may be the last one remaining who hasn't.
Well, yeah, I think. Well, by the time that Animal Crossing comes out next week, maybe Swiss will be along for the ride.
A lot
So
of the
we
new games
are.
I've played though are kind of like remakes and stuff. So I mean, I guess Warzone is like
Yeah,
the
that's
newest one.
I was chalking you in for Warzone. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, very much so. Yeah, thanks for the Warzone talk. I'm gonna give. I want to give Plunder a try because I played a lot of Blood Money in Battlefield Hardline, so I'm curious to see what that plays out like.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious to see how it works, how seamless it is after just doing an Xbox to PC, multiplayer rounds on Game Pass to see how cross-platform works on Activision as well. So curious to
Yeah.
give that a try.
Yeah, when I was playing it, it actually it shows like the Xbox has a little, obviously the X in it, and then there's another one that was just like a monitor, and I think there was like a PC, maybe it was a console. I couldn't tell because the icon was kind of small, but I've played with multiple people. It seemed all to work okay, so I didn't have any
And does
issues.
it do the same thing? Do you know? I know in Modern Warfare this fall with the multiplayer that it prioritized kind of input, so it was matching keyboard and mouse people with keyboard and mouse people, or you could opt into it. Does it give you any indication there, or is it kind of just in order to keep the player count high, it just kind of keeps throwing you in? But it seems like they've got the structure to separate those out if they would want to.
Yeah, like I said, I couldn't tell with that, and I didn't really look through the settings all that much, so I don't know if you can like if there's any kind of switch like where you can turn on and say, hey, I just want to do console or whatever. But I'll have to look at that and see a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Well, sounds good. Thanks for the rundown on it. I appreciate it. So the final game to hit, and I'm actually not going to talk about it too much, is Final Fantasy VII, the remake demo that I played through it once, and played through on normal mode, played through it again, or at least played halfway through it again on classic, which is really normal mode on easy. It really just it's the difficulty setting is easy, but it gives you a little bit more pausing for actions.
So classic is the very close to bona fide turn-based mode.
No, I thought that's what I thought as well. It didn't feel like it, right? Um, it, maybe I just didn't get into enough combat with it. Like when you have enough of you in the demo you only get a second player. You only get two party members. That classic in theory sounds like it should be a little more of that kind of turn based. But so I'm curious to see what that ends up looking like. It's a beautiful game. The action is intense. Playing against the final boss of the demo, I burned through all my potions and trying to get the right kind of switching back and forth. At times slows down when you switch through people. So it's a very enjoyable and a very pretty game. I think my hesitation still is one. I'm glad that it's out there as a demo, so it gives people a chance to experience it. It is still going to be only a part of the real, the complete story. And so that's where my excitement and pre-order status has kind of shifted. Like, if I'm not actually going to complete the story until sometime in the next generation of console, how much of a hurry do I need to feel like I need to be in to play this, the first couple chapters of it? So again, enjoyable, definitely. I say this as somebody who played through Crisis Core on PSP and really enjoyed that kind of action RPG combat, and so this feels very similar to it as well. But I think that I'll be curious to see once the actual game comes out to find out, how much of this actual game we're getting, how much we're how much there's still lots of game questions, uh, about it in terms of how much of the game, how much has changed, what they've added to it. Does it feel like it's been added for the sake of padding, or has it been added to create kind of a more cohesive story to it within this first chapter? So maybe we'll come back to it when we get Swiss on there, since he's got some Final Fantasy, some chops as well. Gentlemen, the idea of transitioning, the Final Fantasy demo that's going to carry us into the next generation, at least given the pace that Square puts games out at, that it may carry us further, but we are on that kind of tail end of this generation, and so the pix play that has been thrown out to us is that as we prepare to transition or sunset at least the current console generation, um, this may be our last time to go back and play some multiplayer games like we've been talking about, or some server-based games like we've been talking about with Stadia and Destiny. That there are going to be games that are going to depend on those servers that may be kind of sunsetting, that are no longer be supported. So the assignment is to pick a game that you think you're convinced that will go out of support, or that will no longer be supported as we move to the next generation of consoles. So,
and I would say for you PlayStation players, that could include games that you are not 100% confident will be made backwards compatible, since that still is kind of ill-defined for the PlayStation 5.
it sounds like you're giving Swiss an out.
Myself too, as a PlayStation player. So I mean, I have games on PS4 that I don't know for certain I have a guarantee will be playable on PlayStation 5.
Fair enough.
It's going to be harder on Xbox.
So,
everything.
They get a little bit of everything, right? Exactly. So that is our assignment. Gentlemen, thank you for such a great discussion tonight. We covered some good game experiences and consumerism aspects around Stadia. We've got a chance to talk about a number of current games, but also things that are pulling us back in and engage us. Things like Dirt and, we've talked about a bunch of games, gentlemen. We hit Yakuza, we hit Warzone, we hit Dreams and Ori. We hit the Destiny aspects, as you were talking about Stadia and kind of blowing through the Red War campaign. So we have covered a significant chunk of games during our game experience show tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. So for myself, DBQ Hams, Agasicles, Stamus, and Osiris Prime, this has been enough to keep going. And until next time, we will always try to be enough to keep you going. Play the games you like, love the people you do, and stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face. Good night.